Let's start off by briefly going over this original Saw film. The first Saw film was released in 2004 and was actually a pretty good movie. Although it never really got a lot of love from the critics, it has yet to break 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. In fact, I don't think any of the Saw sequels actually broke 50%, but that's beside the point. It was a very actually good horror movie, and it's one of the best, if not one of the best, to come out of the 2000s. And it has had its influence in pop culture and the horror genre. Now, here's my ranking of the Saw films, without including Jigsaw. You got the first one up top, of course, everyone agrees with that. The second one, most if not everyone also agrees with that. And then my ranking goes down to 3, 4. That's no. 3, 6. Yeah, 3, 6, 4, 5, and 7. And while there might be some moving around in there, most of the Saw fans tend to agree the first one's the best, the second one's right behind it, and the worst is Saw 7, aka Saw 3D, the final chapter. And it's a really complicated timeline and story that I'm not going to really try to get into too much. So let's just go ahead and watch the 8th installment of the film. Now, keep in mind, the story of the film takes place 10 years after the death of John Kramer, the original Jigsaw killer. And this film is 7 years after the release of the previous film, Saw 7, back in 2010. So let's get into it. So the movie opens up on a guy named Edgar, like fleeing police, going up to the top of this building, and getting some sort of device thing that has a trigger on it that's not a gun or whatever. Police are surrounding him, including Detective Holloman? Holleran. Yeah, Detective Holleran. And police just end up shooting him. And Edgar, before he dies, says that people are going to die. Opening title, Jigsaw, and we're focused on the 5 people that we saw in the trailer with the bucket heads. And so the 4 of them begin to wake up, and then we hear the Jigsaw voice saying that they're here to confess their sins, and in order to make it out of this room, which has them hold with buckets on their head, chained to the other side of the room where there are a bunch of spinning saws ready to kill them. He says they have to give a blood sacrifice. And so it begins pulling and pulling, but one of them realizes that it just needs a little bit of blood, so she cuts her arm a little bit, and that stops the blades and everything, releases the bucket on her head. She gives the information to 3 of the other 4 people, but the 5th one was actually still knocked out and did not wake up until he's like right in front of the saws, and he's seemingly killed sort of like out of view of the other 4 who are now in a different room, which is very clearly a bar now. And they're just realizing that they are in some deep shit right now. Now let's cut away from them, and we are now focused on the 2 people in like the police mortician, the forensics room, where Logan, the head person there, and his assistant Eleanor are examining the body of a buckethead guy that was found in public during the daytime in the public park. And of course, Detective Hollerman, as well as his partner, are there trying to understand what's going on. And they manage to cut the bucket off the head, and they see that the head is sliced off like this, even though the bucket seems to be completely intact. And they see that there's a jigsaw piece missing from the body, indicating that this could be a Jigsaw murder, which is surprising considering John Kramer died 10 years ago. And they found a little like chip thing they plug into a computer, and there's a little recording from Jigsaw saying that there's a lot of I don't know, saying that he's going to kill the first 5 people for the police department and the rest is up to them. So, I don't know, it's something weird like that. So I don't really pay attention to that much. And so that and so they take it over to the other scientific department of the police station to try to figure out whose voice is on the little chip thing because of course it's distorted to sound, you know, to be disguised. Sorry about that. All right. I know I just came out from signing this, but of course, this is hard to keep track of. All right, so. All right. And so we cut back to the 4 people that are in the barn now, and we get to know them, at least their names. There's Carly, the blonde woman, Anna, the dark haired woman, Ryan, and there's Mitch, the African American guy. And out comes the little Jigsaw puppet on his tricycle with a tape recorder that says "Play Me." And so, one of the guys takes it and plays, and down comes a bunch of syringes, and the tape recorder says that one of them will will cure whatever disease or infection he put into the Carly girl, and the other ones will be acid. And apparently the reason for this because Carly apparently stole money from a woman's purse, a woman who, while chasing her, began having an asthma attack and died. And so, unable to decide which one she should take, and as the chains are dragging them up into the ceiling to be hanged, the Ryan guy just basically makes the decision for her and puts all 3 needles into her, which stops the chains and releases them from the chains. But of course, Carly is now dead. So, way to go there, guys. Way to go. All right. And so now we cut back to Detective Halloran and his partner begin trying to investigate who the hell is behind all this because it can't be John Kramer because, again, he's been dead 10 years. We get it. And in addition to the Buckethead guy that they find another body that appears to be Carly with the same acid like cause of death in her face that happened to her in the barn. So of course this is again concerning. And they see another Jigsaw-like piece is taken away from her body as well. And we do begin to and Halloran begins turning suspicions towards Logan and Eleanor of the lab and begins learning a little bit more about them. Logan was apparently was a military veteran who served with Detective Halloran's partner during the war, and apparently he was captured and tortured a little bit, which sort of explains the scars on his back. And apparently several years ago, his wife was killed by a breaker-enterer that was never actually caught, and so it's just him, his daughter, and Nanny when he's being busy at work. And of course, Halloran turns towards Eleanor as well, and Eleanor appears to actually it's discovered that Eleanor was offered a job in Cleveland to run the whole lab place, but she turned it down a couple years ago, or a few months ago. And interesting tidbit: Eleanor appears to have frequently visited a website in the dark web called Jigsaw Rules. That's basically all the Jigsaw fans just talking and sharing stuff, and I kind of like it. I mean, it's sort of like a play on the fans of the Saw franchise a little bit. Although they don't really give it a lot of attention, I do wish they actually give that more attention. Because I think they could have really worked with that. But anyway, So the Edgar guy who was shot on top of the rooftop isn't actually dead, but in a coma. But he is then kidnapped from the hospital, and so Detective Holloran is going to begin a search looking for the body, but his partner, who went to exhume John Kramer's body just to prove that John Kramer's dead, sees that instead of John Kramer's remains, it's Edgar in John Kramer's coffin, and which is really weird and obviously scares a lot of people. And fun fact again, they're examining the Buckethead's body, and apparently underneath his fingernails was blood from his presumably killer, and apparently the blood underneath the fingernails is an exact match to the blood from John Kramer. So this is starting to get a little trippy now. Now let's cut back to the three people. Now it's Anna, Ryan, and Mitch, and they're in a new room, and there's a door that says not an exit. And so Ryan is like, I can open this door, but then he gets caught in a trap. And of course, Mitch and Anna are in a separate trap in the same room, and the only way they can get out is if Ryan pulls the lever that will release him from the trap, will also cut off a large chunk of his leg. He eventually does end up doing it, and the other two are safe, and now he's without a leg. So now they continue going on into the next room. In the next room, there's this weird spiral trap thing that's apparently supposed to be like heated and such, top of the motorcycle. And in the tape found in that room, it says that Mitch sold a motorcycle he knew had faulty brakes to apparently Jigsaw's nephew, who that was then died because of that. Okay, at this point we still don't know who the current Jigsaw killer is, but a nephew? Huh. Okay. This is interesting. So now Mitch is now in a trap. He's upside down in a chain and is being lured into this heat spiral trap. In order for him to get out, he has to pull the brake switches at the bottom, or he'll risk getting like his body, killed due to heat and spiraling and movement and such. And of course, he eventually dies. So now it's just Ryan and Anna. And while that's going on, Logan sort of like talks to Eleanor, saying that why she turned down the job and what's her business with this website and such. And so Eleanor shows Logan her little studio, which is where she recreates and rebuilds most, if not all, of the devices that Jigsaw used in his murders. And she even has her own little replica of the spiral trap that was just used to kill Mitch. And apparently behind that story said that that thing wasn't actually used in any of the murders investigated, but was probably used during like a game before the investigation because John Kramer did have plans that showed how he built it and such. And of course, while this little confrontation between Logan and Eleanor is going on, with Logan saying that she has to get rid of it and such, Detective Holloran's partner is secretly in the background taking pictures and such, and going to show him to his partner, Detective Holloran, who is now has probable cause to go into the studio to try to find stuff that's in there. And there's this secret room which shows all the newspaper clippings and such back during when John Kramer was alive, and out comes down the body that looks like it's killed in very much the same manner as Mitch. So now she's the number one suspect. And Detective Holloran decides to also bring in Logan in for questioning, but his partner, who goes to get Logan, convinces him to not take him in by telling him like why Holloran and Logan don't really get along. And hold on, let me find out the reasoning here. Apparently, Logan says that Detective Halloran used Edgar sort of like a criminal informant and used Edgar to get to for his own personal gains and benefits, allowing other people to go free and such. And apparently, Detective Halloran never actually found out who killed Logan's wife, so of course there's going to be tension between the two of them, and I think that's enough to convince him that Detective Halloran is actually the Jigsaw killer. So they begin investigating into him. Meanwhile, Eleanor comes to Logan saying that she did not do it and such, and that she may have found out where the game actually took place. And so they go look for the place. Meanwhile, cut back. Of course, Anna's trying to find out a way out of the barn, which is against the rules. And when she tries to get out, man in pig mask knocks her out. She wakes up in a room. She's chained to one side of the room. And Ryan, still with one foot and most of his leg gone, chained to the other side. And in the middle is the mastermind behind the game, John Kramer? What? Oh, oh. Okay. So this is not apparently the whole I never really died thing, but I guess this is now sort of like an homage to Saw 2, where the the murder that happened in Saw 2 actually took place before the events of the film. So this is actually a flashback prior game, not happening in real time, which is actually kind of fun. And so he places a shotgun in the room with one bullet in it and leaves them to determine who lives and dies. And the reason behind why he kidnapped those two, Ryan apparently back when he was in high school sort of caused the death of three of his high school friends, but he did not like take claim for it and tried and said like a different story where he wasn't actually held responsible. And Anna was actually John Kramer's neighbor, and she got into arguments with her husband, and she had a newborn baby, but she was so distressed by the baby and such that I guess she cracked, put the baby next to her sleeping husband, and the husband rolled over and suffocated the baby to death. So the husband was taken in, but he ended up hanging himself. Nah, no wonder John Kramer took these two. They're assholes. And demented. Anna takes shotguns, about to kill Ryan in order to get out of the room, but shotgun backfires, kills her, and it turns out that the keys to their chains were inside the bullet. So, and I guess they could have figured that out if they paid attention to how he worded it, saying that this one bullet is the key to their escape. Nice wordplay there. So, now Ryan's left to die now. So, cut back to Logan and Eleanor. They arrive at the barn, and Detective Halloran follows them and to the barn. And back at with Halloran's partner, they're at Halloran's place, and they see several of the cutout jigsaw pieces from the victims in his fridge. So now they convinced that he is actually the Jigsaw killer. So now Detective Halloran confronts and chases Logan in the barn while Eleanor runs off in a different direction, and Detective Halloran is knocked out due to a syringe. And now we get into the new room with Detective Halloran chained in the middle of the room by the neck, and same goes with Logan in the middle of the room. Around the neck is actually a laser trap, which will move in under hit, slice it open. And according to the Jigsaw message in the speaker of the room, they have to confess their sins for the reason why they should die, and in order to escape. And so Detective Halloran says that he will confess first, but actually presses a button that's set in the middle of the room that actually forces Logan to confess first. Kind of a dick move. And so Logan confesses to the fact that he was the one who misdiagnosed John Kramer, which delayed the discovery of his cancer, preventing him from taking care of the cancer before he could cure it. So basically, he's the reason why John Kramer was doomed to have cancer. And so even though he confessed that, he ended up getting killed by lasers, causing blood to gush out of his neck. And right away, I'm like, okay, that's not how lasers work. Now it's Detective Holloran's turn, and he confesses to the fact that he's used other criminals for his own personal gain and benefiting, causing a lot of them to go walk out free. But the lasers turn off for a minute, and then up and rises Logan from this obviously not an actual laser trap. Now, here's the big reveal and twist of the film. Yes, Logan was the one that was responsible for misdiagnosing John Kramer. And all the people that we were seeing getting killed in the game was actually from 10 years ago. And that was actually John Kramer's very first game. This was his first Jigsaw extravaganza. However, since Logan was actually the guy who slept through the announcement and didn't actually hear what he's supposed to do to get out of the first room, John Kramer saved his life because he should not die due to error and actually gave him a second chance. He fixed him up, like stitched him back up, which explains the scars in Logan's back, and he becomes the original. Logan is the original apprentice to John Kramer? Okay, let me get this straight. So in the original 7 Saw films, we have Amanda as an apprentice, then Detective Hoffman, then Jill for a little bit, John's ex-wife, and then Dr. Lawrence, who was Dr. Gordon, who was actually one of the main victims of the first Saw film. But apparently, Logan was the one that was the original apprentice? Okay, John Kramer has kept a lot of his apprentices secret from each other, so this is not unexpected, but still a little cliche. I don't. Okay, I'll take it. It's actually not that bad, to be honest. And so, and Logan knows that Edgar, the informant that Detective Holloran used a lot, was the one that killed his wife, but Holloran didn't arrest him because, of course, he was his informant, and he needed to use him for his own personal gains and such. And so, as Logan is leaving the room, Detective Holloran is just like, hey, you can't do this to me. The original Jigsaw always gave people a chance to live. And so Logan's like, bring back my wife. How about that? Although, to be fair, I'm okay with Logan letting Detective Holloran die because, remember, Detective Holloran said he was going to confess first, but then he made Logan confess first by pressing a button that was actually placed in the middle of the room that started Logan's fake laser trap first. So now Logan just lets the laser trap slice Detective Holloran's face open like it's supposed to. And so now Logan has set up Detective Holloran to be the Jigsaw killer that's now gone missing. And instead of the usual last line of the Saw films being game over, the last line is, I speak for the dead. And that's where the movie ends. And that is Jigsaw, the 8th installment of the Saw franchise. I'm going to be honest with you. I started this video without having a grading for this movie. I did not know how to feel about it. But now that I've said everything out loud, I'm thinking about it. It's definitely not the worst of the franchise. It's definitely not. But if I'm being completely honest, I think this is the 3rd best film of the franchise, maybe even the 2nd best. Okay, the kills in this movie is sort of like a combination of the psychological aspect of the kills and the gory parts of the murders of the sequels. So that might be why it's a little disappointing for some people. And the twists and storylines is is pretty predictable, but I like sort of like the change of the motivation a little bit. In the previous Saw films, there's always been you need to appreciate life and you need to fight in order to live. But in this one, it's sort of we speak for the dead. We avenge them. We make people confess their sins to what they did to innocent people. And I kind of like that. It's a nice change. I even like the last line, I speak for the dead, just as much as I like the line, game over. So, in my opinion, yeah, I think this is the third or second best of the franchise. But even I won't go as far as saying it's the best of the franchise. That will be held by the original Saw movie. But Jigsaw, I'd say it's either the second or third best. And I know this is going to make a lot of people divided, so comment down below with your thoughts. Like, subscribe, share, and I'm going to listen to the new Yellow Wolf album. I'm addicted to it.